You ever seen a room forget how to breathe? I'm not talking about silence like in libraries or funerals. I'm talking about a stillness so heavy, so unnatural, even the air seems scared to move. That's exactly what happened when Marjorie Taylor Greene decided to use Jasmine Crockett's father as a weapon. It was supposed to be just another political hearing, dreary, scripted, forgotten before it ended. A panel on housing reform, chaired by people who barely cared, broadcast on channels few people watched. Lawmakers sat slouched in their chairs, scrolling through phones, half listening, half waiting for lunch. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't one of them. She came prepared, not just with facts and figures, but with purpose. Her voice didn't boom. It cut. Every word was chosen like a scalpel, not for drama, but for impact. She didn't need to raise her voice, because truth doesn't have to shout. She was 3 minutes into dismantling the proposed bill, pointing out loopholes in eviction protections and exposing vague language buried in bureaucratic jargon, when it happened. Greene leaned forward, her tone syrupy with venom. "Before we take moral lectures from Miss Crockett," she said, loud enough for cameras to catch it, "maybe someone should ask what kind of justice her father believed in, since he has a criminal record." It wasn't the words themselves. That hit hardest. It was the intent. The room didn't gasp. No one booed. Something worse happened. It went still, the kind of stillness that follows a slap. An aide froze mid-sip of coffee. A reporter's fingers hovered over a keyboard, eyes turned toward Jasmine, and Greene sat back, smug, satisfied, like someone who thought they'd landed the killing blow. But Jasmine didn't flinch, didn't blink. She just let the silence stretch, and it stretched long and thick, until Greene's smirk began to shrink under the weight of it. Then Jasmine leaned forward, her voice measured and low. "Madam Chair," she said, "what Congresswoman Greene just said wasn't about legislation. It wasn't about housing reform. It was personal, and it was beneath this institution." You could hear a pen drop. She looked Greene dead in the eye. "My father went to prison. That's true. Not for hurting anyone, not for stealing from anyone. He went because he took the fall for something his brother did. He made a choice to protect his family, to protect me. And if you think that's shameful, then you've never seen what sacrifice looks like." Her voice didn't waver. She wasn't apologizing. She was testifying. "He served 8 years. 8 years while my mother worked double shifts. 8 years while I wore second-hand clothes and studied in silence because the world didn't have space for little black girls with convict fathers. But do you know what he taught me?" She paused, just long enough for everyone to lean in. "He taught me how to stand up straight even when people try to shame you. He taught me that justice isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to be better. And no smear from this side of the aisle will rewrite the truth of who he was, or who I am." Greene opened her mouth, but closed it just as quickly. She had no retort. There was nothing left to say, because Jasmine hadn't defended her father. She had honored him. She had weaponized truth in a room that worships performance, and she left no survivors. There was no applause, no headlines. Just a room full of people who suddenly realized they weren't watching a hearing anymore. They were watching history. They thought it would blow over, that after a news cycle or two, after a few spineless tweets and late-night hot takes, people would forget. But the clip didn't fade. It surged. Millions watched Jasmine Crockett dismantle shame like it was scaffolding built by someone else's fear. It wasn't just viral. It was visceral. It struck people in places they don't usually let politics touch. By the next morning, journalists weren't asking about the housing bill anymore. They were asking who Walter Crockett was. And slowly, a different picture began to form. Not of a criminal, but of a man who bent under the weight of a broken system and still passed on the tools to build something stronger. But Greene? She wasn't done. If there's one thing she can't stand, it's a woman who refuses to stay in the box she built for her. So she doubled down, on podcasts, on fringe networks, whispering about family values and integrity. She posted mugshots, weaponized context, twisted timelines. It wasn't politics anymore. It was personal. And Jasmine, she didn't fire back online. She didn't post a clapback video or start a hashtag. She went home, not to hide, but to remember. That weekend, she drove through the neighborhoods where she grew up, the ones with peeling paint and kids riding bikes on cracked sidewalks, the places policy never reaches but always claims to help. She stopped by the now shuttered factory where her father used to work before everything collapsed. She sat on the old front steps of her childhood home and watched a single mom walk her 3 kids home from the laundromat, and something in her shifted. This wasn't about Greene anymore. It was about them, the invisible, the unheard, the disrespected, and discarded. So when Jasmine walked back into Congress Monday morning, she didn't just have her notes, she had a mission. And it started with the one thing Greene couldn't handle: honesty. "Let's talk about values," Jasmine said at the next hearing. No script, no fluff, just her voice, sharp and unshaken. "You want to talk about fathers? Fine. Mine taught me to fight for people who don't get second chances. What did yours teach you? How to bully people from behind a podium?" Gasps. "Real ones this time." Greene tried to interrupt, but Jasmine kept going. "Let's talk about integrity. I could have hidden my past. I didn't. Because what you call a weakness, I call a weapon. My scars don't make me soft. They make me sharp." A pause. Then, "And if you're still confused about who has values in this room, look around. The people standing with me, they don't need a microphone to know the truth when they hear it." And just like that, the tide turned. Not with fire, with clarity. Jasmine wasn't just fighting back. She was rewriting the terms of the fight. The tie. Backlash came fast. Conservative outlets branded Jasmine a professional victim, accusing her of weaponizing trauma for sympathy. Anonymous accounts flooded her inbox with hate. One headline screamed, "Congresswoman plays the prison card." They wanted her quiet, cornered, defeated, but Jasmine had weathered worse. Years before the cameras, before the Capitol, she'd sat across from judges who never looked her in the eye, who saw a black woman and assumed everything but brilliance. She didn't flinch then. She wasn't about to start now. Behind closed doors, even her allies were uneasy. "You're making it personal," one senior Democrat warned, eyes darting to make sure no one overheard. "It's not how the game is played." Jasmine just smiled. Maybe the game needs changing. The next hearing came with added security. The room felt colder. Greene walked in with a team of lawyers and a cocky tilt to her jaw, certain Jasmine wouldn't dare go further. But Jasmine wasn't there for Greene anymore. She brought photos, not glossy campaign shots, real ones. Her father in his welding gear, his hands blackened with honest work. Her mother in a cafeteria uniform, asleep on a bus bench between shifts. A photo of Jasmine herself, 15 years old, holding a debate trophy in one hand and a bus transfer in the other. She stood, voice steady as steel. "This is who I come from. You want to talk about legacy? Let's talk about this." Greene tried to object. "This isn't relevant to housing reform." But the chair didn't gavel her down this time, because the room had changed. People were listening. "You say I'm emotional," Jasmine continued. "You're damn right. Because when housing policies fail, they fail people like my family, people you only talk about when it benefits you. I live those stats you quote. I buried the bills they cause." Silence. Not out of fear, out of respect. Even Greene didn't have a comeback. And as Jasmine sat, a Republican aide across the aisle, not more than 25, maybe a year out of college, slid her a folded note. 4 words, written in nervous pen. "My dad, too. Thanks." Outside the hearing, reporters swarmed her. "What's your response to Greene's claims? Do you regret opening up? Is this strategy or sincerity?" She stopped, looked into the lens. and said one thing: I'm not here to survive Congress. I'm here to change it. And somewhere, in 1,000 living rooms, kids who had never seen themselves in a suit, who thought politics was only for the polished and perfect, sat up, straighter. Because Jasmine wasn't just representing, she was redefining. The gloves came off. After the last hearing, Greene's allies went into overdrive. They filed complaints, ethics violations, alleged misconduct, decorum breaches. One even accused Jasmine of emotional manipulation unbecoming of a Congresswoman. It wasn't about justice anymore. It was war. Jasmine's team begged her to dial it back. Don't give them more ammunition. Her donors warned her to stay on script, but scripts didn't change the world. Truth did. Then the smear campaign started. A tabloid exclusive leaked juvenile records, not hers, but her cousin's. Misleading headlines painted Jasmine as part of a criminal dynasty. They dredged up mugshots, blurred context, and ran them with captions like, "Is this the future of American leadership?" Jasmine didn't respond on social media. She didn't clap back on cable news. She waited. Then she walked back into the chamber. "I wasn't elected to be palatable," she began, standing in front of the House committee. "I was elected to be honest. And honesty makes cowards uncomfortable." Gasps. Greene scoffed. "Here we go again. Congresswoman Crockett's victim hour." But this time, Jasmine had come armed. She pulled out a document, an investigative report detailing corporate lobbyists laundering money through shell packs, the same ones that had funded Greene's last 2 campaigns. "While you were busy digging through my family's past," Jasmine said, locking eyes with Greene, "I was busy digging into your future indictments." The room exploded, not with shouting, but movement. Chairs scraped, aid phones buzzed. Journalists whispered and typed with ferocity. The air didn't go quiet this time. It went electric. Greene tried to laugh it off. "Another baseless accusation. I submitted the report to the ethics committee this morning," Jasmine said. "It's not an accusation, it's an inquiry." Boom. One sentence turned the narrative on its head. This wasn't a defense anymore. It was an offense, a strike, a warning. Jasmine didn't just survive the fire. She became it. After the hearing, as Greene dodged reporters in the hallway, Jasmine stepped outside into the evening light. There were protesters gathered, some angry, some inspired. One young girl held up a cardboard sign that read, "Unapologetically loud, unashamedly true." Jasmine smiled, not because it was easy, but because the cracks were showing, and through them, light was getting in, the storm Jasmine had unleashed. It didn't stay inside the chamber. That evening, a clip of her confrontation with Greene exploded across social media. Not just the usual echo chambers. It hit everywhere. Late-night shows, college campuses, veterans forums, even Wall Street boardrooms. One tweet read, "She didn't just check Greene, she rewrote the rules mid-game." It had 5 million views by morning, but the real firestorm came from an unexpected corner. The whistleblowers. 2 former interns from Greene's affiliated PACs stepped forward, armed with emails, burner phone logs, and confidential memos. And what they revealed wasn't just shady, it was radioactive, kickbacks, fake consulting contracts, crypto funnels, the kind of paper trail that couldn't be denied. Suddenly, Greene wasn't barking on Fox News. She was lawyering up. And Jasmine? She didn't gloat. She didn't tweet. She stayed moving. That week, she introduced a new bipartisan bill focused on campaign finance transparency. Not flashy, not sexy, but lethal in the right hands. It was called the People's Light Act, a name borrowed from her father's favorite saying, "Truth don't need a spotlight, it just needs room to shine." The opposition scrambled. They tried to paint her as a radical. They tried to dig deeper into her past. They even tried to manufacture a scandal involving her college thesis. But the public wasn't buying it. A viral thread from a schoolteacher in Detroit went like this: "I don't care if her cousin went to jail. I care that she fights like every poor kid matters. I care that she doesn't flinch." That's my America. Meanwhile, Greene had gone unusually silent until she showed up at a rally in Texas and tried to flip the script. She wants to destroy what we've built, Greene declared to a roaring crowd. Well, I've got news for her. This country doesn't belong to broken families and criminals. It belongs to fighters. Jasmine didn't respond with fury. She responded with footage. A never-before-seen home video surfaced. Jasmine, age 9, standing in a cluttered garage, welding her first metal plate under her father's guidance. Sparks flying, her smile wide, unbothered by heat or fear. Her dad's voice behind the camera. Keep your hand steady. Don't rush truth. Let it melt in. The video played during a CNN segment titled, "The Steel in Her Spine." In less than 24 hours, the hashtag Tiders Welded by Truth was trending in 11 countries. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about inheritance, legacy, and Jasmine had just turned a smear campaign into a national mirror. Now tell me, when was the last time you saw someone build a revolution from rust and reputation? By the end of the week, Jasmine Crockett wasn't just trending, she was echoing. Churches replayed her floor speech between sermons. College students quoted her in graduation caps. A community center in Newark spray-painted a mural, her silhouette, forged from welding sparks, her father's hand resting on her shoulder in glowing outline. Even international press picked up the scent. American justice finds a new voice, read a front-page headline in The Guardian. But inside the Capitol, things weren't quiet, not even close. Greene's allies were spooked. Her usual defenders, talk show pundits, deep-pocket donors, fringe podcast grifters, began to distance themselves. Slowly, strategically, like rats leaving a leaking yacht. And Jasmine, she kept showing up. She wasn't yelling, wasn't chest-pounding. She was holding hearings, listening to constituents, meeting with senators across the aisle. Quiet power, grown power, the kind of presence that made cameras follow her even when she didn't ask them to. Then came the moment no one expected. A live town hall, Jasmine and Greene, face to face, no filters, no staffers, just 2 microphones and an auditorium packed to the rafters. The moderators tried to keep it civil. They tried to steer the conversation back to policy, but Greene couldn't help herself. They love her because she's a symbol, Greene sneered, eyes scanning the crowd. But symbols fade. What happens when she disappoints you, when the myth cracks? Jasmine didn't react right away. She looked to her left. A teenage girl in the second row. Freckles, braces, holding a spiral notebook with "Ms. Crockett changed my life," scrawled in red marker. Then she turned back. "You want to talk about cracks?" Jasmine said, voice low but rising. "My entire childhood was built on cracks. Cracked sidewalks, cracked ceilings, cracked futures. But we don't run from cracks. We grow through them. We shine through them." The room went silent. Again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was awe. Greene tried to fire back, but the damage was done. Not to Jasmine. To the illusion that charisma could beat character. That noise could drown out substance. That cruelty would always win the mic. That night, even some of Greene's own supporters tweeted, "I came to cheer Marjorie. I left questioning everything." Back in D.C., a Republican senator pulled Jasmine aside in a corridor. "You scared them," he said with a dry chuckle. "They thought you were a moment. You're a movement." But Jasmine wasn't looking for praise. She had already texted her mother. "We're not done. Not yet. Daddy's watching." She knew what came next would be harder. The legacy war had just begun. The next morning, Jasmine woke up to an inbox flooded with messages, letters from strangers, stories of hardship, hope, and grit pouring in from every corner of the country. Single mothers, ex-cons trying to rebuild, teenagers fighting stereotypes, people who saw themselves in her story. But the fight wasn't over. In the halls of Congress, the backlash was sharpening. Greene and her allies launched a coordinated smear campaign, twisting Jasmine's past, questioning her motives, and trying to paint her as weak, too emotional for politics. But Jasmine was ready. This time, she took the battle public. She held a press conference, not in a sterile room, but on the steps of the Capitol, where the American flag fluttered like a promise. Her voice was steady, fierce. Yes, my father made mistakes. But so has this country. We all have a past. What matters is what we do next. I'm here to fight for a justice system that doesn't tear families apart for survival, for policies that lift people up, not push them down. Cameras flashed, phones recorded. Social media exploded. The tide was turning. Days later, a bipartisan bill was introduced, focused on prison reform, family reunification programs, and second-chance employment initiatives. Jasmine's name was on it. She looked out from the Capitol. Steps again, feeling the weight of her journey, from whispered judgments to thunderous applause. And deep inside, she knew this wasn't just her fight anymore. It was everyone's fight. Because when you turn pain into power, silence into a rallying cry, and a broken past into a beacon of hope, nothing can stop the revolution you start. So, what do you think? Should we turn this story into a whole series? Drop a comment below and let me know if you want more stories like this. Shall we continue?